We're at the Trail Canyon trailhead, and we're going to go up Mummy Mountain and get right to the final approach to the summit. And instead of going up to the summit today, we're going to see if we can circle the base of the Mummy Mountain cliffs. I don't know how far you can go around the when you're facing the final approach, instead of going up that V-shaped canyon, take a left and skirt the base of the cliffs. I don't know how far around Mummy Mountain you can go in that direction. I've circled Mummy Mountain all the way except for that northwest side of Mummy Mountain. So we'll find out if it is possible to make a complete circuit of the base of the Mummy Mountain cliffs. And here we have beautiful morning up at the Trail Canyon trailhead. And there you can see Cathedral Rock, where the South Climb Trail for Mount Charleston Loop is. And we're in pretty much of a bowl here. A lot of imposing cliffs all around us. And as we look around, you can see toward the cliffs of Mummy Mountain up in this direction. So let's get going and see what happens today. Here we go. One of my favorite spots on the Trail Canyon Trail. We're just below the junction, probably about a quarter mile, eighth of a mile below the junction with the North Loop Trail. And the reason I like this is that you've been doing some rather steep uphills up to this point, and you're in the forest. Not much of a view. Then all of a sudden you break out into this view, and you can see Mount Charleston. And there's the south ridge of Kyle Canyon. And there's Griffith Peak. Cox Comb Ridge. And then circling around, Mummy Mountain coming into view. There's the cliff of Mummy Mountain. And that area just to the left of the cliff right here is what I call the horrifying half, which is straight uphill for a half mile. So there you have it. And there's the north ridge of Kyle Canyon. And all of these are shown on LasVegasAreaTrails.com. in the Mummy Mountain area, Mount Charleston, Cox Comb Ridge, Griffith Peak. All of these can be found on LasVegasAreaTrails.com. So there you have it. And this is the beautiful spot where you break out into the open. And another great thing about this place is that this is where you first see a lot of bristlecone pine trees. Those ancient trees that are between 0 and 4,000 years old. So very impressive. Okay, onward. We're going to head up this trail, continue up the Trail Canyon Trail, and over to the junction. Okay, we're at the junction. And by the junction, I mean there's the Trail Canyon Trail down in that direction, 2 miles to our starting point. There is the North Loop Trail going up. And here is the North Loop Trail going over to Fletcher Peak. And, oh, can you see Fletcher Peak? I believe it's right up there. So Fletcher Peak and Raintree in that direction. Here's the cliffs of Mummy Mountain. And we are heading up to the horrifying half, which you will see in a moment. Straight up the Avalanche Slope up toward Mummy Mountain. If you continued on this North Loop Trail, you would end up at Charleston Peak, Lee Peak and Charleston Peak. And by the way, speaking of which, there is a great shot of Charleston Peak through the trees. So this is a great location in its own right. Some people just come up to this point and enjoy the view and then head back. By the way, in this direction is Cox Comb Ridge, which is an awesome little experience. I think it's around 9,800 feet, but you're on a kind of outcrop peninsula, whatever you want to call it, that gives you an incredible view of Kyle Canyon, up and down Kyle Canyon. So Cox Comb Ridge is a great place to be, and you'll see that on all these on Las Vegas area trails. But today, again, we're heading up to the cliffs of Mummy Mountain, and we're going to go around the left side and continue around, see how far we can get. So here we go up the North Loop Trail. Here we are at a beautiful little spring, Cave Springs. And this is a trough. People love to water their dogs here. And for at least until the late summer, early fall, there's water coming out of this little pipe and filling this trough. It does dry up later in the season. And then there's a little trail that goes up to the cave of Cave Springs. I've never taken that. I've passed this area probably 25 times. One of these days I'm going to have to go up there. I hear that it's not that very far to get to the cave. And then here's the North Loop Trail continuing past the trough of Cave Springs. And this is the direction we came from. You can see good shot of Griffith Peak right through the trees here. And then the north ridge of Kyle Canyon. Ash trees, and then bristlecone pine is really taking over at this point. Beautiful bristlecones. Okay, continuing on up to the horrifying half. Here we go. Okay, we are approaching the Mummy Tree on the North Loop Trail. And as you look up in this direction, you're seeing the horrifying half, which is pretty much an avalanche slope that goes up for, maybe a quarter to a half mile. I haven't measured it, too tired. And there are a number of little scramble points that you can make out as you look up this avalanche slope, but the main one is at this tree that, if you look closely, there is an M and an arrow, which means if you're going up to Mummy Mountain, you take a hard right and head up the avalanche slope. There's a cairn on that rock also. Let's just take a look around. So here is the M. Watch for this M, and if you go straight on this trail, which is the North Loop Trail, you will circle around and eventually get to Mount Charleston, or better called Charleston Peak. And there's the south ridge of Kyle Canyon. Ends at Griffith Peak right here. And if you continued on down, you'd be going down Sexton Ridge and end up at Lovell Canyon Trailhead. And no trails up near the top, but you do end up reaching like Griffith View Trail and then down to Lovell Canyon Trail. And then here you can see Harris Mountain and Griffith Peak and the saddle between, and that's another adventure with no trails, but very beautiful. And then here we're looking at the cliffs of Mummy Mountain and back up the horrifying half. So we're going straight up to the left edge of that cliff, and then we're going to take a hard right up at the top and just ascend that cliff there, and then take a left and head on over to the final approach to Mummy Mountain. But instead of doing that final approach and going to the summit today, we're going to see how far around the edge of Mummy Mountain on the upper cliffs we can go. It may just be like 100 feet or so. I don't know what's around the corner up there. Maybe it'll be longer. We're going to find out today. But here we go, up the horrifying half. Well, we're a ways up that horrifying half, and just wanted to get a view of the angle of this slope. You can see the trees, they grow straight up. And so what you're seeing here is the angle of the slope. And well, here's some strategy for ascending something like this. It's all about knowing where the stairs are. And on the way up, what I do is I stick to the larger rock, and there are little places that you can put your feet, and it's almost like stairs if you look real closely. The large rock doesn't slide so much. Now, if you're in the finer rock, yeah, you're going to slide back every single step you take. So on the way up, the larger rock. But on the way back, what I do is thick, small gravel. And what happens there is you just kind of slide. You slide to a stop every step, but you can descend a lot more rapidly on that thick gravel. If you get to thin gravel and dirt, you don't want to be on that either on the way up or the way down, or you're going to slip and you're not going to do a horrendous fall, but you will bang yourself up just a little bit. One time I slipped on that kind of very thin dirt with a very thin layer of gravel, and I caught myself by grabbing a plant, but the plant happened to be a thistle. And boy, I had thistles in my hand for weeks. Could not get them all out. And I think some of them might still be circulating around my system. But anyway, yeah, thick rock on the way up, thin but deep gravel on the way down is the way to tackle this. And once again, the angle evidenced by the trees is pretty steep. So I just take my time, one step at a time, and end up at the top of the horrifying half. By the way, these hiking poles are just essential. They're yucca stalks, last year's yucca stalks, very straight, as strong, as still, as light as balsa wood, and I wrap them with twine soaked in wood glue. Makes a great handle. So anyway, I would strongly suggest that. They last about a year, and then they wear down to where I need to do a new set. But yeah, for half hour of work per set, not bad. They never collapse on you. Okay, onward. Full directions for and a demonstration for making these hiking poles are on LasVegasAreaTrails.com in the gear section. And here we are at the summit of the horrifying half. And you can see Harris Mountain, and then the saddle up to Griffith Peak. And if you look straight down that saddle, on the other side is Lovell Canyon, and at the end of Lovell Canyon is Potosi Mountain. So there are some of the sights around here. And then when you're up on Griffith Peak, you can actually go down the backside of Griffith Peak and just descend over to Lovell Canyon, or more commonly, people head to the right and along the south ridge of Kyle Canyon on up to Charleston Peak. Here's a good shot of Charleston Peak, shaded by the clouds right now. And then as we look around, we're on that ridge at the top of the horrifying half, and looking down the other side of the ridge, we'll see better views of this, is Lee Canyon. And you can see just a section of the Bonanza Trail down there. Maybe if you look closely. Lee Canyon. And then there are the cliffs of Mummy Mountain. And oh boy, can we head around those cliffs? Here is the V-shaped canyon right here where you can summit the cliffs of Mummy Mountain up to the summit. We are going to head along, take a right at that V-shaped canyon, see how far we can get. And yeah, we may not get more than a few feet. Then maybe we'll go back up to the summit of Mummy Mountain just for just to be up at the summit. Beautiful summit, my favorite summit in the Charleston wilderness. And then here is the continuing route up the top of the cliffs that we saw from below, where I said you go up the horrifying half and you take a right and go along the top of the cliffs. Well, here they are. So we're going to go straight up this rock and continue along the top of the cliffs over till we turn left and head along the base of the Mummy Mountain cliff right up here. So who knows, we're exploring today and we'll see how far we get. Here we go. Okay, here we are at the base of the upper cliffs of Mummy Mountain, and you can see there's a little trail here. It appears and disappears. I'll show you where we came up here. We ascended that ridge you saw in the last section, and at the top of that ridge, near the top, we took a left and then jogged to the right, and we kept to the base of, well, there's the cliff there. There's the ridge that we ascended. And let's see, let's get a better view. Yeah, this is looking down on that ridge we ascended. When we got to near the top, we reconnected with the trail. The trail kind of appeared and disappeared, depending on if you were on solid rock or if you were on ground like this that lends itself more to leaving a lasting impression. And when we reached the top of that ridge, we jogged in this direction and then on up the slope to where the trail reappeared. So now what we're going to do is continue along the base of these cliffs, and we'll go to the opening of the final approach where most people summit Mummy Mountain, and we'll go a little beyond that before we summit, just to see how far around the edge we can get today. Okay, here we go. The higher view, you can see a lot more. And what we're doing, looking at here, is straight down at that ridge we ascended after we reached the top of the horrifying half, and we took a right, headed up the ridge, and then we took a jog to the left and another jog to the right, and ended up on this trail at the base of the Mummy Mountain cliffs. And above those cliffs is the summit of Mummy Mountain, and there's an opening right here. Takes you straight up to the summit, but instead of taking that opening today, I'm going to continue around, see how far I can get around the base of these cliffs. If I hit a drop off, of course I'll turn back around, but we're going to just see how far we can get. And then we're looking down into Lee Canyon, and there's the Lee Canyon ski area. And then if you're in Lee Canyon and you take the Bristlecone Pine Trail, you'd head off this ridge system, along this ridge system, over to McFarland Peak, right there in the center. Circle around the left side of McFarland Peak and continue on that ridge. It's the Bonanza Trail, all the way to, I think that might be in the distance in the center there, Bonanza Peak, but we're not sure. Few more sites of note here. You're looking at Lee Peak, and there is an upper passageway. You see this ridge that, oh, there's Lee Peak. And if you take this ridge here, and you see there it is, you can take it actually to the ridge that I just ascended, the top of the horrifying half. But you can take that ridge all the way from Lee Peak. It's the north ridge of Kyle Canyon. You can take that ridge all the way to Mummy Mountain without descending back to the North Loop Trail. It's a little tricky, but you can do it. And in the Four Peak circuit page on Las Vegas area trails, I took that ridge and ended up on Mummy Mountain. And on that day, I ascended Griffith Peak and Charleston Peak there. Took the south ridge of Kyle Canyon between Griffith Peak and Charleston Peak. Descended Charleston Peak, headed over to Lee Peak, and then took this ridge right up to where I'm standing now, and then on up to the summit of Mummy Mountain. And just took this trail right here and right through the opening up there. I'll show you the opening closer view in a moment. And that was the Four Peak circuit. Of course, I could do 5 peaks if I went down the other side of Mummy Mountain and went to Fletcher Peak. And I have ascended about 4 times up that side of Mummy Mountain. So I have traversed that section from Fletcher Peak to the summit of Mummy Mountain. And before ascending Griffith Peak, you can actually start at the South Climb Trail and ascend Harris Mountain and then cross over to Griffith Peak, which I've done. So I've actually done all 6 peaks, and the route that takes you all the way, connecting all those peaks. Haven't done it in one day. I tried to do it in one day. Just didn't work. Didn't have enough energy to pull that one off. But anyway, here we are. You see the beautiful bristlecone pine trees. You're looking down into Pahrump Valley, and off in the distance, if it weren't hidden by the clouds, maybe you can still see Telescope Peak. It would be very hazy. Right in the center would be Telescope Peak on the other side of Death Valley. In the Panamint Mountain Range. So there you have it. There is pretty much all the connections up here in the Charleston wilderness to all the highest peaks. And now let's see if we can, how far we can get around Mummy Mountain without ascending. Here we go. Okay, here we are at the final approach to the summit of Mummy Mountain. We're not taking it today. It's a 10-minute scramble. Very nice, actually. And Love the summit of Mummy, but nope, not taking it today. Here's the trail that we just traversed. And the reason we're not going up to the summit of Mummy Mountain is that we're going to see, for the first time, what it's like to travel along the lower cliffs, just to the left of this summit approach. And if it starts looking a little dicey, I'll probably turn around, but it looks sort of doable. So I haven't taken this section before, and usually I'm so tired by the time I get here that I think, okay, I'll do it next time. Well, this is next time. So here we go. Well, so far so good. It's not the most generous ledge in places. This is a nice spot right here. Look at that bristlecone pine. Wow. Hidden from human eyes most of the time, but here it is. I don't think I'm the first one to make this path here, but I don't think many people do traverse this side of the cliff. Let's take a look. I gotta watch my step here. Here is the Mummy Mountain cliff. And we're just traversing the base of the cliff here. And then, God, these bristlecone pines are amazing. Yeah. And then we've got a cliff below us. Definitely don't want to get a good slide going. Otherwise, we are toast. There is that ridge that we ascended. And right down here is the summit of the horrifying half. And then we ascended up this ridge and ended up in this area. And here you can see more of the Mummy Mountain cliffs. We traversed the base of those cliffs on the regular trail that ends right about that area. And then you head up the final approach canyon to the summit of Mummy Mountain. But here we're exploring, and we're going to just check out and see what's along the edge here and how far we can get before we reach a drop off that has too much exposure for today. Okay, here we go. Okay, looking back where we just came from, gone a little further. And there you see the cliffs of Mummy Mountain. And here we are continuing along. Oops. This sometimes less than generous ledge that I'm on. But not too bad right here. Looks like somebody made it to this point with their walking sticks, and there are these sticks. Anyway, continuing along, you know, every time I reach a corner, I think, well, that might be my last corner where I need to turn around. And you can see a part of the summit up in this area. I've stood up there. But let's just continue and see how far we can get before it starts looking crazy. Here we go. Well, we didn't get too far. I think we pretty much reached the end of this little exploration. because as I look ahead, the slopes become steeper and they end in cliffs. And I don't know how in the world one would get around these cliffs that are up ahead. A lot of loose rock on the cliffs. You start a slide there and that'll be your last experience on Earth. So I'm going to say this, for me, is going to be the end of the Mummy Mountain Northwestern base of the final cliffs exploration. And here's a nice little ledge that I'm on. I could name this Uninterrupted Picnic, because the chances of somebody interrupting your picnic as you're sitting on this ledge are pretty slim. But wow, look at the view. There's Lee Peak and Charleston Peak, the North Ridge, or the South Ridge of Kyle Canyon, and then here is the North Ridge of Kyle Canyon heading up toward Lee Peak. South Ridge heads up to Charleston Peak, and very rugged. Yeah, if you want to find a place that has total solitude, that you can pretty much guarantee you're not going to see anyone while you're up here, here you go. Nobody comes up here. And it is a nice little ledge that I'm on here. You could even pitch a tent if you wanted. I don't know where you'd go the next morning, but yeah, look at this. Very, very nice. Very wild. And so that's about as far as we're going to get around the northwestern edge of Mummy Mountain. The idea of doing a complete circuit of Mummy Mountain below the cliffs. Now, I've done the complete circuit above the cliffs on the Mummy Mountain North Ridge page of LasVegasAreaTrails.com. But I've never made it all the way around the base of the cliffs, and it just doesn't look like it's possible without some really good equipment and a lot of experience. So anyway, this is good. This is actually a beautiful spot. So if you're ever wondering where you'd end up if you don't summit Mummy Mountain and instead try to circle around, keep going straight, here's my suggestion of where you're going to end, right in this spot. Okay, there you have it.